Welcome to this special lecture on AI and scientific writing. Let's start with the question whether AI can actually write properly. This is an excerpt from a book, The God Fragment, which was written largely with the help of AI. You carry within you a library more vast than Alexandria, more complex than any supercomputer ever conceived. Right now, as you read these words, 3 billion base pairs of genetic information are stored in every cell in your body, constituting the instructions for a molecular symphony that began playing the moment you were conceived and will continue until your final breath. But here's what should terrify you. We only understand a fraction of this library. The Human Genome Project, that triumph of scientific achievement, revealed a disturbing truth. Of those 3 billion base pairs, only 2% actually code for proteins. 2%. The rest, scientists labeled it junk DNA. Junk, as if 4 billion years of evolution would waste 98% of its most precious real estate on meaningless clutter. But what if it's not junk at all? What if it contains a dormant program waiting? In every cell of your body, in every cell of every human being, this genetic dark matter sits quietly, patiently, not corrupted by time, not lost to entropy, but preserved with meticulous care. Why would nature guard so jealously something that serves no purpose? And I think this illustrates quite nicely that AI can actually write properly and can help you with writing. But there's a catch. It works only well with small defined tasks. If you give it a long unstructured task, AI will eventually drift off. So if you ask it, for instance, please write me an entire manuscript on this figure, it will end up in utter chaos. In contrast to creative writing, we in molecular sciences already have the advantage that we already have experiments and probably figures. But we still have the problem, how do we start a manuscript from scratch? And most of you have probably considered whether they could get a little help from chat engines like ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity and so on. And the most important question one needs to address then, whether it's actually legal to use AI for writing. For creative writing, such as for this book, there are guidelines by the publishers. For instance, if you publish a book with Amazon on Kindle, it requires you to inform us of AI-generated content when you publish a new book or make edits to or republish an existing book. So it's actually fine to use AI, but you have to disclose the use. And this is actually quite similar what journals require. The institution that gives the guidelines for this is the so-called COPE, the Consortium on Publication Ethics. And they state that there are a few requirements if you use AI. First, AI tools cannot be listed as a co-author of the paper. And secondly, you must be transparent in disclosing in the materials and methods sections how AI was used in the generation of the publication. So the second lesson would be that when you use AI, you have to be transparent with its use. And usually what you do for scientific manuscripts is that in the methods section, you include an AI disclaimer. For instance, like this one, where it states the first draft of the text was generated on PublicationGod.com with assistance from Claude AI. And then you define in detail what the AI did and what it didn't do. And in the end, you usually end with the statement that the authors take full responsibility for the content and the accuracy of the work. Of course, this raises the questions whether journals could actually catch you if you don't declare whether you've used AI or not. This is an example. Of course, there are lots of tools available that can check whether a text sounds AI or GPT generated. And this is an example on Matthew 1 from the Bible. And as you can see, the detection software calls it as 95% AI detected. So this basically leads us to possible conclusions. The first one is that Jesus' apostles had access to advanced AI technology by time travel, or more likely that the detection of AI is not reliably possible, and there's no way of preventing its use. So the real question is actually whether it's ethical to use AI for scientific writing in biomedicine. And for experimental sciences, I would say that experimental sciences, they rely on the experiments primarily, and these experiments, they are usually done and they have been analyzed without the help of AI already. So what we need is only the wrapping of these experiments. So we need to describe the data and provide a little bit of context, but the actual experiments are already done. On the other side, we have to state that many small and negative studies actually never see the light of the day. So they are done, but no one has the time to write them up. And the real question or the real ethical dilemma we should be discussing is if it wouldn't be better to get these studies out using AI than not at all, because every small study and every bit of negative data can actually advance science. But there might be areas where it could be unethical to use AI for scientific writing. For instance, if you think of theoretical and social sciences. Here, the main result is not the experiment. Here, the text and the ideas that are developed are the main result. So it might be unethical to use AI as what the outcome will be is not originally your product. The second situation where AI can also be used is for the review of manuscripts. But there we have several problems. First, you cannot just upload data that you don't own to open servers such as ChatGPT. Secondly, the AI might not know the unwritten pitfalls in your area of expertise. For instance, in my area of expertise with thyroid hormone research, I know that certain antibodies or certain ELISA kits don't really work. And if I see them in the manuscripts, I will know that the data are unreliable. AI might not know that because they are commercially available and it doesn't know that they don't work. Also, AI can't recognize bullshit because it takes everything that is published as a fact, whether it's your own paper or compared to some Chinese paper mill paper. So the DFG has actually just published a white paper on the use of AI in the review process. And the criteria are quite similar to what we have seen in scientific writing. First is confidentiality. So you can't share the manuscript that you're supposed to review with other sources and you can't upload it unless these cloud-based systems guarantee that the data are neither stored nor used for training purposes and that you have a contractual obligation with these people. So you can't upload it to ChatGPT, but there's AI tools that will fulfill these criteria. The second criterion is also that you have to establish transparency. So when you use AI for reviewing purposes, you also have to state that. And finally, the same as for writing is the ultimate responsibility for the content remains with the reviewer. So you have to read and check everything that the AI has written for you. And this brings us to the most important lesson when you use AI. You have to always check the output from the AI fully and carefully. It's always unethical to use this AI output without checking it. And you are the author, so it's your responsibility that every word and every detail is correct. AI is just a tool, it's not a co-author. And there are several well-known problems with AI, and this is from the European Commission, and generative AI models can exhibit the following limitations that you need to be aware of. There could be a training data bias because these AI models, they are trained with a set of data and these data might not reflect the entire overall knowledge in the area of expertise. There could be a prompt bias, so because you usually you write a text what you expect the AI to do, and depending on how you write that, you can also affect the outcome. And the most important and most relevant and most highly discussed at the moment one is the invented citations, because generative AI models can generate plausible references that are actually incorrect and they don't exist. And I would like to give you an example for these plausible references, and this is actually an example from the very scientific writing course that you are attending at the moment. So these are references that were found in the reference section of a submitted manuscript, and you can, when you look at them at the first glance, they look quite reasonable. There's a list of authors, there's a title, there's a journal, and there's for some of them even a DOI. But if you then check in detail whether these papers actually exist, they don't. If you check this DOI, you will end up with a completely different paper that it's not by these authors and has a different title. And for this paper up here, the title doesn't exist at all. There's a title that is quite similar, it has similar authors, but it continues in the second part completely differently. So how does that happen? And it happens because that's just how these LLMs work. They guess the most likely word that would follow the ones that you've provided. So if you start with a sentence that would be once upon a, then the LLM would say the most likely word that is coming now would be time. And that's the same with the publication references. If you have an author A that publishes quite often with an author B, then the LLM will say, okay, we put author A and then we put author B because that's what happens quite often, and so on and so forth. It will generate the entire reference like that, and you end up with a fake reference. So it seems to be really important for you to pick the right tool. So you can't just pick any random AI chatbot to write a scientific manuscript. So in the preparation of this course, I of course tried several available chat GPT engine models to test whether they are actually suitable for scientific writing. And it turns out most of them are not. And that's for several reasons. So I developed my own tool for scientific writing, which I call PublicationGod. And it tries to avoid all these issues that I've mentioned before with AI. For instance, it won't come up with hallucinations and fake DOIs because with PublicationGod, you have to define the library before you start writing, and it will only include real PubMed citations. Also, you have to adjust a trustworthiness score, saying whether you trust the content of that certain publication or not. So you can select whether it's your own publication, it has a high trustworthiness, or whether it's a bad publication, then you can set it to low and it will be treated accordingly. You also avoid the long task drift off because this tool will guide you section by section, similar to what we've done in this course. So it's small and very defined tasks. Most importantly for us working at the university or university hospital, it's located entirely on the U servers, and there will be no training with your data for any AI models. So it's compliant with our data policies that we have at this university, and no data will ever go to the US or to China. You don't need to define the prompts yourself, so you don't need to tell the tool what to do. It will have predefined prompts which you can just activate with the click of the button, and then it starts generating the results section or the introduction according basically to the instructions that we have also used in this course. There are certain other features of this tool that help you write a paper. You can invite co-authors to check the paper. You can generate a review of your paper using AI. You can export it as an RTF format. You can generate a cover letter for submission to a journal, or you can even upload it to a preprint server to get a DOI right away. And as I've said before, this PublicationGod tool follows the exact structure that we have used at our scientific writing course. So you'll start with the figure and the legends, then you'll continue to the results, then you start looking at the literature in preparation for the introduction and the discussion. In the end, you fill in the remaining gaps like the methods, the abstracts, you add the authors, and then in the end you can export your paper for review. At the bottom of each section, there's a couple of instructions that you can use, and that will help you to guide you through the process of generating that particular section. And if you're a student and register with the student email, the education mode will be activated by default, and you'll get an extra set of instructions when you start writing your first manuscript. So in the end, I would like to encourage you to explore this and all the other AI tools that are available, because I think the AI will be here to stay and they can actually really help you with the task at hand. However, you have to keep in mind the lessons that I'm trying to give you through this lecture. The first one is that it works well with really small defined tasks, so don't overexpand and don't expect too much in one go. Secondly, you have to be transparent with AI use, so whenever you've used it, you have to declare it in some way. Third one is that always check the AI output fully and carefully. Don't accept everything that it says, that it's automatically true. It can contain many, many errors. And the fourth and most important lesson is that you have to pick the right tool for the task, so don't just pick a random ChatGPT engine, for instance, to write your scientific manuscript. Thank you for listening.